Welcome back to DemoHub Pod, where we explore all the cool stuff happening at the cutting edge of tech and AI. And get this, it's powered by AI itself. Today we're doing something a little different.
Oh, yeah.
You bet. Our awesome listeners sent in a ton of research papers, tutorials, even some forum threads.
Wow. Sounds like a lot.
It is a big digital pile about the latest in AI.
So how are we going to tackle all that?
That's where you come in, Sonia, our AI expert.
Hey, everyone. Glad to be back. Brian's right. You guys sent us some really fascinating stuff.
Way too much for one person to handle.
Absolutely. But think of this deep dive as your cheat sheet to AI mastery. We're pulling out the absolute must-knows for tech professionals like you.
Like a super concentrated AI shot straight to the vein.
Exactly.
And believe me, some of this stuff is seriously mind-blowing.
Like what? Give us a little teaser.
Okay, get this. We're going to talk about how something as simple as a website cookie can actually influence powerful AI models.
Huh. Interesting.
Then we'll jump into the evolution of those models, how they went from, like, basic number crunchers to the sophisticated systems we see today.
And of course, we're going to show you how to use all this in the real world. We'll even look at building an AI-powered application.
Using some of the hottest tools out there, right?
You bet. Python, LangChain, the whole shebang. Sound good.
Sounds amazing. Let's dive in. First up, data. Because before you have AI, you got to feed it something, right?
Absolutely.
It's easy to forget that something as small as a cookie on a website plays a huge role.
Oh, those little bits of data tucked away in your browser. They're not so innocent, are they?
Not at all. What kind of things are they tracking, Sonia?
Well, think about it. They're keeping tabs on what sites you visit, the links you click, even how long you spend on a page. They paint a pretty detailed picture of your online habits.
So it's more than just remembering my login info.
Way more.
Interesting. What does all this mean for us as tech folks? Why should we care?
Well, as developers, we have to be super mindful of all this data collection.
Especially with all the privacy regulations these days, right?
Exactly, GDPR and all that. Understanding how data is collected and used is more important than ever.
Makes sense. Don't want to accidentally build something that lands us in hot water. Okay, now for the main attraction, large language models, or LLMs, as the cool kids call them.
Catchy.
One of the sources you guys sent in was actually a whole timeline of LLMs. Sonia, can you give us the SparkNotes version? Like, how did these things evolve?
All right, so it all started with these things called recurrent neural networks, or RNNs. Think of them as the first generation of AI that could actually handle language.
Like they could understand a sentence or two.
Yeah, pretty basic stuff. But if you gave them anything too complex, they'd get totally lost.
So not exactly writing poetry yet.
Not quite. Then came long short-term memory networks, or LSTMs. They could handle much longer sequences of data. That was a big jump forward.
Longer, but still not super sophisticated.
Right. But then, boom, a real game changer, the transformer model.
Transformer, huh? Sounds powerful.
It was. This revolutionary paper came out. Attention is all you need. It introduced this mechanism where AI could actually focus on specific parts of the input data.
Instead of just reading everything in order.
Exactly. That meant they could finally grasp those subtle nuances of language.
Pretty clever. So this attention thing, that's what led to the really powerful LLMs we have today, like
GPT-3 and all its successors.
Right. Those models can generate realistic text, translate languages, even write code.
They can even hold a conversation.
It's crazy. But hold on, didn't I read somewhere that there are actually different types of AI models out there?
Yep, good catch. There's generative AI, like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Discriminative AI, it's a key distinction.
Help me out here, Sonia. What's the difference?
Think of it this way. Generative models are like chefs. They create something new. Discriminative models are like food critics. They analyze what's already there.
Okay, that makes sense. So LLMs, with their poems in code, they're like chefs. They're whipping up something new. And the food critics, what are those AI models up to?
Well, they're great at things like image classification. You show them a picture, they can tell you what it is. A cat, a dog, a tree, you name it.
So if I need an app that generates content, I go with a generative model. If I need to sort images, I use a discriminative model.
Exactly. And speaking of apps, guess what?
What?
One of our listeners actually sent in a source that walks us through building a real-world application. It's a multiple-choice question generator built using some seriously cool tools, OpenAI, LangChain, and Python.
LangChain. I've been hearing that name a lot lately. What's the big deal with that?
It's like your AI sidekick. It helps you handle all the tricky parts of building an application. Like, remember prompt engineering?
Crafting the right instructions for the model.
Right. LangChain makes it way easier to manage all that. It also helps with memory management for the LLM.
Memory management.
Yeah, like how much information the model can hold in its mind at once. And get this, you can even connect it to external data sources.
Wait, so you're saying we can connect our AI to, like, the whole internet?
Pretty much. The possibilities are endless. We'll dig into all that after a quick break. But before we do, I want to hear from you, our listeners.
Yeah, hit us with your AI questions.
What are you working on? What challenges are you facing? Let's chat.
We'll be right back. So before the break, we're getting into some of the tools that can really help us build powerful AI applications. Sonia, one that caught my attention was LangChain. It seems like a real game changer for working with these complex language models.
It really is. Remember how we were talking about those memory limitations with LLMs?
Yeah, like their short-term memory isn't that great.
Exactly. LangChain helps us work around that.
How so?
Well, instead of giving the AI a massive document to process all at once, we can feed it information bit by bit.
So it's like giving a bite-sized pieces of information.
Exactly. That way, the model stays focused, doesn't get bogged down. LangChain provides these tools for prompt engineering.
Prompt engineering, right. Crafting those instructions for the AI.
Yes. And a well-crafted prompt can make all the difference. LangChain makes it much easier to manage those prompts, especially when you have complex tasks. Multiple steps.
Makes sense. So LangChain helps us control what the LLM sees and how it processes it. Now, what about connecting AIs to external data sources? You mentioned LangChain can help with that, too.
It can. Imagine giving your AI access to the whole internet, all that information right at its fingertips.
Whoa. Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example.
Let's say you're building a chatbot. Needs to provide real-time stock updates.
Okay, yeah.
With LangChain, you could connect your LLM to a financial API. It would provide that data.
So the chatbot could actually fetch the latest stock prices on demand.
Exactly. And present it back to the user in a natural way, just like a human would.
Wow, that's powerful. But I imagine there are challenges too, right? Managing all that data efficiently.
You're right. That's where vector databases come in.
Vector databases. Okay, full disclosure, I'm not super familiar with those.
Yeah.
What are they all about?
Imagine a traditional database. You search for information based on keywords, right?
Yeah.
Vector databases are different. They understand the meaning of the data.
Meaning, not keywords. How does that even work?
It's all about this process called embedding. We take complex data, text, images, and turn it into numerical vectors.
Vectors.
Think of them like unique fingerprints for each piece of information.
So each piece of text gets its own special code? What's the point of that?
Those codes, those vectors, they capture the essence of the information. Vector databases use them for something called similarity search.
Similarity search.
They can find related information, even if it doesn't share any of the same keywords.
Wait, so if I'm searching for articles about AI, it could find articles that don't actually say artificial intelligence.
Exactly, because it understands the underlying concepts. It's like having a super smart librarian instantly recommends books based on your interests.
That's a great analogy. Okay, so vector databases are essential for any AI application that needs to deal with lots of data.
Pretty much. And they're getting super popular. Some of our listeners actually send in resources about specific implementations, like Pinecone.
Pinecone, okay. Got it. So we have LangChain helping us manage the LLM and vector databases to manage the data. It's all starting to click.
It is. And speaking of making things easier, another topic that's generating a lot of buzz is open source LLMs.
Open source LLMs. Yeah, this is something I'm really excited about.
Me too. We've been talking about those big commercial LLMs, but now we have these incredible open source alternatives.
Changing the game, right?
Absolutely. One of the YouTube videos our listeners sent in actually dives into the benefits. I think it was from Analytics Vidya.
Okay, cool. What are some of the key takeaways? Why should developers be excited about open source?
The biggest one is accessibility. They're freely available to use, modify, removes that huge barrier to entry.
You don't need a massive budget to start experimenting.
Exactly. That's a game changer.
It is. But what about performance? Can open source models really compete with the big commercial ones?
That's a great question. And the answer is increasingly yes. We're seeing some seriously impressive open source models emerge, like Llama 2 from Meta.
Llama 2, yeah, I've heard that name. What makes it so special?
Well, one of the key advantages is its flexibility. You can fine-tune it for specific tasks, Tailor it to your exact needs.
So more freedom and control for developers.
Absolutely. You don't always get that level of customization with commercial models.
Right. Okay, so open source sounds amazing. But are there any downsides? Like, what about support?
That's a valid point. With commercial models, you usually have dedicated support teams. With open source, you're relying on the community, which can be a bit hit or miss.
So choosing between open source and commercial really depends on your priorities.
Exactly. No one-size-fits-all answer. But the fact that we have these high-quality open source options is a huge win for the AI community. It fosters innovation, collaboration. It's always a good thing.
Totally agree. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to touch on something that's been on my mind. We've talked about the technical side of AI. What about the human side, specifically the impact on jobs?
That's a big one. A lot of people are worried about that. Generative AI especially has the potential to automate a lot of tasks.
So is this the beginning of the robot takeover? Are we all going to be out of jobs?
I don't think so. While some jobs may be automated, history shows us that new jobs also emerge.
That's true. The printing press, the automobile, the internet, they all caused disruption, but they also created new opportunities.
Exactly. And I think AI will follow a similar pattern. We'll see new jobs emerge in areas like AI development, data science, prompt engineering, even AI ethics and regulation.
So instead of fearing AI, maybe we should view it as an opportunity to adapt, to learn.
I think so. And it's not just about learning new technical skills. Things like critical thinking, creativity, emotional intelligence, those human skills, they'll become even more valuable.
That's really interesting. It sounds like the future of work is going to be very different, but not necessarily a bad thing.
Exactly. And we want to hear from you, our listeners. What are your thoughts on the future of work in the age of AI? Do you see it as a threat or an opportunity? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Welcome back to DemoHub Pod. We've covered so much ground already. Sonia, before we wrap up, I definitely want to circle back to that whole thing about AI ethics. It's not just about building cool tech, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be responsible, too.
Absolutely, Brian. We have a responsibility to make sure the AI we build is used for good, benefits society.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things we should be watching out for?
Well, one of the big ones is bias.
Oh, right. We talked about that earlier. AI systems learn from data, and if that data is biased, well, the AI is going to be biased too.
Exactly. And that can have some really serious consequences. Think about things like hiring decisions, loan approvals, even criminal justice.
Yeah, those are high stakes.
Yeah.
We definitely don't want biased AI making those calls. So it's not just about avoiding, obviously, bad data, right? Like hate speech or anything overtly discriminatory.
Right. Even data that seems neutral can contain hidden biases. And those biases can actually perpetuate inequalities.
Tricky. So how do we even begin to address that? Sounds like a tough problem.
It is. But there are a lot of brilliant minds working on solutions. One approach is to be super careful about the training data, make sure it's diverse, representative. Another is to actually develop algorithms that are designed to be fairness-aware.
Fairness-aware algorithms, huh? It sounds promising. So there's active research happening right now to make AI more ethical.
Absolutely. And it's not just researchers. Governments and organizations are also working on regulations, guidelines for responsible development.
That's good to hear. Sounds like people are taking this seriously, but I imagine there's still a long way to go.
There is. It's an evolving field. We're always learning new things, but the important thing is that we're having these conversations. We're working towards solutions.
Okay, so bias is one big concern. What else should we be thinking about?
Another big one is transparency. We need to be able to understand how AI systems make decisions. If we can't explain why an AI denied someone a loan or flagged a certain image, it's hard to trust it, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like if a doctor can't explain why they're prescribing a certain medication, you'd probably hesitate to take it.
Exactly. Transparency builds trust. And it's not just about explaining the reasoning, it's also about being open about the data, any limitations of the system.
So being honest about what the AI can and can't do, not overselling its capabilities.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the question of accountability.
Right. Who takes the blame if the AI makes a mistake?
Is it the developers? The company? The user? These are tough questions.
Yeah, it's almost like we're in uncharted territory here. There's no clear legal framework for this yet.
True. It's a new frontier, and we're figuring it out as we go. But it's important to remember AI is a tool.
Right. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. It all comes down to the intentions of the people behind it.
Well said. So it's not about being afraid of AI. It's about using it responsibly, ethically. And that brings us to the end of our AI deep dive.
Oh, what a journey. We went from the inner workings of LLMs to ethics, the future of work. It's been a lot to take in, but super interesting.
It has been. So what are some key takeaways for our listeners, Brian? What should they remember?
I think the biggest one is that AI is here to stay,
Mhm.
and it's changing fast. Staying informed is key. We got to keep learning.
Absolutely. And we need to be mindful of the ethical side of things. Build AI that's responsible, that benefits everyone.
And let's not forget the power of community.
Yeah.
The open source movement is making AI more accessible. We can all learn from each other, shape the future of this technology together.
I love that. So to our amazing listeners, what are your thoughts? What excites you about AI? What concerns you? Share your insights in the comments. Let's keep the conversation going.
Absolutely. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to DemoHub Pod for more awesome episodes on cutting-edge tech.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Keep learning, keep innovating, and stay curious.
See you next time.